Ben, great to be here with you. Can you, just to begin, can you share a bit about your role and the work of the Maine Coast Fishermen's Association?
Sure, Justin. Thanks so much for coming into the office and chatting about this. The Maine Coast Fishermen's Association is an industry-based nonprofit, and we work to build sustainable fisheries out on the ocean and vibrant fishing communities back closer to home. And I'm the executive director of the organization.
Great. So I know that during the pandemic, you all launched this wonderful Fishermen Feeding Mainers program. Can you tell me a bit about the genesis of the program and how it's evolved?
Yeah, so we had always been touching the seafood world because that's ultimately where the fish that we catch and harvest goes. Um, but in Maine, we have a small scale groundfish fishery, so those are species like cod and haddock and flounder, and they mostly end up in restaurants in Maine. And so when we lost those restaurants during COVID, we lost all of our markets. We literally had fishermen going out, filling their boats with amazing quality seafood, coming to shore and being told there was no market to sell that catch into, and we had to turn it into lobster bait. So it was a pretty sad state of affairs because at the same time that we had fishermen going out and not being able to catch their fish, we were hearing about the horrible food insecurity that was just spiking around our state at the same time through COVID, and especially the need for high quality protein. So we were able to go out and work with some foundations and some partners to build out a pilot program to buy fish from fishermen at stable, fair market prices, and then donate that into local food insecure communities. And once we were able to kind of build a proof of concept, we then were able to start really leveraging that. We were able to work with the state to get COVID relief funds into that program as well. And so to date, we've got close to 600,000 meals donated to both schools and local food insecure programs throughout the state.
It's wonderful. So you mentioned schools. So that's obviously the work that Full Plates is working on. So do you have a sense of what kind of impact Fishermen Feeding Mainers has had specifically on school meals?
Yeah, it's been amazing. We are able to donate the fish to local schools, and as you well know, there's only so much of a budget that a school can work with when it's trying to put together a meal plan. And so us being able to come in with local seafood and provide haddock or hake or pollock has been great. We've also been able to work with the schools to incorporate some language and some knowledge and some teaching, some education around that seafood for both classes and for the staff and faculty that needs to be doing the cooking. And so it's been a lot of fun. It's been a learning process for us and for them. But the feedback that we've gotten from the schools and the students and those in the food service side of the equation has just been a real highlight of the work and the program. And we've been so happy to be able to be a part of that story.
It's just wonderful. It's wonderful. So what are some of the challenges that you've encountered with the program? Specifically around schools, but more broadly too.
So early on in the program, one of the most significant challenges was schools weren't used to getting local fresh product, right? And so we literally had in our first donation that we made to a school, we called them after it was donated and we said, "Hey, how did it go? What did you think?" Like, we had to throw it away because we didn't use it in time. We're like, it came out of the ocean 3 days ago. What are you talking about? But like for them, they had been used to getting a product that was either frozen or it had come packaged, prepackaged. So there was some education that needed to go into like, all right, if you're getting a fresh product that is seafood, how do you keep it? How do you defrost it? So there was definitely that learning curve. And once we were able to identify that, that was something we were able to recognize that every time a new school came into the project, we needed to do some education around how to deal with the seafood. And then just, seafood is not something that people are used to cooking on a regular basis and that most kids aren't used to eating on a regular basis. And so it was like, how do we start to cultivate some different recipes and preparations that both make it simple for them to do en masse, but also make sure it's delicious. And we've been able to work with some great partners through the school systems that have been able to help us and some local chefs. And Maine Sea Grant helped us do a bunch of stuff that build recipes and do that in different languages so the different schools are able to kind of share that with the community at the same time. So that's been the barrier, is those that we are giving this seafood to, they aren't familiar with it in the same way that they would be if you were giving them chicken breast or ground beef. And,
Sure.
and so some of that has been become a part of our work is kind of becoming the educators to the educators around seafood.
Great. Is there you mentioned different recipes and that sort of thing. Is there one that's been a particular favorite?
We have it's a panko crusted hake that one of the schools did that we actually cooked at home that was delicious. That was just like really, my kids loved it. And then actually, one of the things that's been pretty cool is that as COVID has kind of evolved and moved, there have been some chefs that have come into local schools to help them prepare. And so down in southern Maine, a local chef came in and he did like fish tacos with the students, and it was just apparently all the feedback that we got from that was just it was amazing. It was the best thing that they ever eaten. And so I think that's some of the places. It's just like recognizing like how to meet people where they are and what they're familiar with, and it's some of those things are just fish often feels like a barrier food because we aren't as familiar with it as we are with chicken or beef or pork. But once you actually start preparing it, it's faster and easier to cook than most of those other things.
And healthier in some cases.
Definitely. A lot, that's one of the things that is a real highlight of this is, the more you read about the need for fish in our diets, seafood in our diets, and especially in young kids. I was talking to a researcher out of the Southwest who was telling me that you could probably do some simple analysis to add up all the IQ points that we've lost in our nation by not having enough seafood consumption in our children, because it's so good for our brains and those omega-3s and other like just micronutrients that come from it that we don't get otherwise. And so really injecting seafood into the diet of children, school-age children, is crucial for long-term mental development. And so that's been it's been pretty amazing that we've been able to be a part of that in Maine.
Very cool. So you mentioned that a lot of the early stages of this, it was born out of the pandemic. A lot of funding came through some of those emergency funding sources, ARPA and other sorts of things. What's your vision for the future of this now that we're sort of moving past that, and what's needed to make that vision a reality?
Yeah, I mean, we are extremely fortunate in that the state of Maine, the Department of Marine Resources, the governor's office was able to work with us through, there was a chunk of money set aside in the COVID relief bills for the commercial fishing industry. And so right now we are working off about a $960,000 sub-grant to our organization to keep this project going into the middle of 2023. But after those funds run out, we don't have much of a plan except continuing to ask for the support of our community, because it's a great project, expensive project, right? If you want to be feeding people good food, and you want to be paying people the wages that they deserve along the way, it gets very expensive. And so we pay the fishermen fair price for their catch. We pay the local processors to cut and process and cut and freeze if it needs to be frozen, or package if it needs to be packaged. And so by the time that we're donating seafood, you're almost looking at $6 per pound into the schools or Good Shepherd Food Bank or other places, and that's too high of a price for how we currently kind of budget into feeding our communities. And so that's where like there's a lot of benefit for the local economy in what we're doing, because all that money is going right back into the working waterfront in those places. But it does mean that there's not a shortcut for us on the other side of trying to make this a sustainable model without additional revenue streams into the project through either donations, foundations, individuals, or we are kicking the tires on some different ideas. We've got a Maine Coast monkfish stew, which is a value-added product that's for sale throughout Maine, and all the proceeds from the sales of that product go back into this program. But our hope is that we can start to kind of show a proof of concept where it's like there's benefit to the local economy, there's benefit to the local community, and then obviously the food part of the equation for our schools and our food insecure populations is such a huge opportunity that we are hopeful that through working with partnerships like with you guys and with others throughout the state, that we can start to amplify the impact that this has had and grow it into the future.
Wonderful. Something I always like to ask folks when I have a chance to chat with them is, do you have a favorite memory from childhood of what school meal or favorite meal?
I mean, I my brain is a little bit weird in that it filters out most of my younger memories. So like the things that I remember are like getting chocolate milk at the every day, and that was such like a treat growing up, was like the chocolate milk at lunchtime, um, and kind of doing that with friends. But I don't remember a lot of the food. I remember the people, right? I remember the friends. I remember being around these folks, and at that time during lunch and snack was just like such an important part of community building over that food, and regardless of what it was and where it came from. So that's, I think that's the like my youngest memories. But I was also very lucky. I grew up in New Hampshire, and my dad owned a bagel shop in town. And so in growing up, at a certain point, my dad started to provide bagels into the school system at a discounted price as well. And so I was able to go and like kind of be able to see both sides of the equation in my high school, of like, oh, the bagels that my dad makes, and now they're, you can go and you can buy them here. And so it was a fun way to kind of, bring, once again, community together around food, in the local community that I grew up in.
So you're just carrying forward that legacy into another generation.
I mean, we're less carb heavy now. It's more focused on protein, but I still love a good bagel if you can find one.
Thank you. Anything else that you wanted to share?
No, I think that the big piece of this is like, it really does take a community to make a program like this work. And for an organization like ours, which has mostly been focused on policy and project work out on the water and close to home, we really had to rely on fantastic partnerships with folks like you at Full Plates and Good Shepherd Food Bank, and the local school systems were amazing at helping facilitate the movement of fresh fish throughout their systems. And so I just cannot say enough good things about the work that's being done with our local food systems in Maine and the community that's around there. And I really hope that we can continue to empower those people to do the good work that is necessary to build community, because that's ultimately where this ends up. Is food is so crucial to everything, but it's really the community that we're building around it that's going to empower us to continue to do that good work. And so I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who has been a part of building this successful project, and from the state governor's office to the Department of Marine Resources to you guys, and others along the way that have really helped empower us to get out and make some mistakes, but do some good along the way too.
Wonderful. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Justin.